No, what I was saying is if you're talking about maximizing the value of your business, you help people buy and sell their small business. And so as a result, you want them to be selling it at maximum value, and you try to help them sell it at maximum value.
Sure.
What I do is help businesses, if you will, before they sell their business, and whether they want to sell it or not, should always be doing the things to maximize the value. So if you remember the seminar, I kind of gave the things they should do to always be aware of to increase the value of their business, and you gave your perspective from a buyer's thing. So I thought maybe it might be a little fun to go through a few of these today. But the background is, although it's not an article.
So let me get this straight. You like this article because he titled his article the same thing you titled our seminar.
No. But good guess.
I was hoping you were going to say exactly.
Well, there's a business guy, an author by the name of John Warrillow, Warrilow. He wrote a book called Built to Sell. And in addition to that, what he did was statistically study businesses that have been sold and determined what the 8 primary drivers of their value were.
Okay, good.
And
like this.
And so I'm I don't know what I'm called. I'm an accredited advisor because I've learned all this stuff. So I thought, you like that? Accredited?
Oh, you're certified.
Certified. Maybe that's the
Certifiable.
word. Certifiable. Pain in the whatever. Okay, and there's 8 of them. If we got time to talk about them, great. But I thought, I'd kind of discuss what it is and kind of how I help businesses with it. And you can kind of give the perspective from the buyer's thing. The first one, you'll love this. First one's it's generally called financial performance. And what that covers is 2 different things. First of all, it's actual financial performance, of the business. And the second thing is how supportable their financial statements are, how credible, how well done they are. And, as you know, a lot of people that make financial purchases of businesses want to look at the projection of future earnings, and they want to decide how sure are they that those are going to happen? So, and in fact, you and I have worked with some businesses together where we've looked at their financials and said, well, you're making a lot of money, but your financials are a mess. And you got to think of it from the perspective of if a buyer comes in and looks at that. And so we help them pull it together, something that's very understandable and something that would give people confidence not only in the numbers that are shown today, but also how can you be comfortable that they've got the wherewithal to project future value so that they can put their value on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
well, I know it does. You've talked about it before.
And let's clarify for people that are listening. Clearly, you are one of the smartest men that I know. So I'm not trying to compete with the knowledge and information that you and this smart guy have that wrote the book. What I'm trying to do is sort of add my experience as a business owner, because I have said many times I've bought and sold, owned and operated probably more businesses than anybody you're going to meet. I'm sure there people are out there, but you're probably not going to meet them. So what you're going to hear from me is sort of my experience side.
I've never found any of that, if that helps you.
So for me, I really like this first bullet point, because the 2 things that people always ask when they're interested in buying a business is, where is it at? Where is it located? They want to know whether it's in their area of interest, and what are the numbers. It is the first thing they ask, and it is the first thing that I ask when I want to help you value your business. And I am amazed how many people's books are in really bad shape, and they really do need to be corrected. And I don't mean in bad shape that they haven't tracked everything. I mean that it's not in a position, it's not in a way that I can say, and here's a test. If I say to you, can you print me a year to date, you should be able to go to QuickBooks or whatever platform you're using and be able to print that for me in 5 minutes. You should be able to do that and have that chart of account. If you can't do that, then I promise you are already devaluing your business. And unfortunately, I hate to tell you this, you're probably devaluing yourself as a business owner and not doing yourself justice. So these books, they're so important, and they're so easy to get right.
Yeah, they really are. And you were the one that was going to tell the stories. But I had a retailer one time. He was close to $1 million in sales, and he literally, his numbers were in a shoebox. He had receipts and stuff in a shoebox, and so he gave them to his accountant once a year to do the taxes. So anyway, the second one is pretty obvious. It's called growth potential. So it's one thing to be able to say what your numbers are today. It's another thing, can you show growth and can you generate growth? And you and I both know, and I don't want to steal your thunder on this, but once somebody sometimes decides to sell their business, they take their foot off the gas. And that you want to show someone growth. Now, the reason, and don't forget, these points are not just for businesses that want to sell. They're the types of things you should always do. And so generating growth, of course, is something you want to do. And I think the message here is if you want to sell it for sure, you better be showing growth rather than a downside. I know you agree with that, don't you, Joe?
Yeah.
Say exactly.
Exactly.
There you go.
Let me tell you what I do. You are in my wheelhouse right here because this is one of the things I can do as a business broker that other business brokers simply can't do because they don't have my experience. And that is, I can help you. I put together a confidential memorandum, which is this detailed report of the business, right? And in that report, one of the things I do is what's called a broker's opinion. And so I will give an opinion on what I think the future of the business looks like. I can do that because I will help the seller put together projections and performance.
Both from the perspective of the industry as well as that particular business.
That's absolutely correct. Yep. And there's 3 questions that we ask when we're putting together these projections or the future, and that is when you're going to have growth, why that growth is going to happen, and how you're going to get there. And if you can answer that, they will believe the future and they'll be willing to give you some value. Because let's face it, we're putting value on today's efforts. But my goal is to try and entice a buyer for the future. And the way you do that is sort of hand them your vision and let them add to that. So this is an important piece of that. So the future is very important. And the best way to get there is to work with a guy like you to say, okay, what is when, why, and how? Let's literally, physically put together a projection. And when you do that, I can assure you you're adding value to your organization substantially, and a buyer feels really comfortable about it.
Well, before we go to break, I want to cover one more, but I want to also take the opportunity to remind people that, these are things, hopefully people are hearing things that they know they want to be doing anyway. Because who knows, they might get hit by a bus tomorrow and they might have to sell their business. And getting it ready to sell, so to speak, or maximizing its value means it's running very efficiently. You're prepared for anything bad that could happen. And what's more is you've positioned it so you're not working to death. And so these are all very important. Let me quickly mention the third before we go to break. It's kind of cleverly called the Switzerland structure. And all that means is that you're not overly dependent on any individual things. Let me explain. That your business is not over-dependent on one employee, that it's not over-dependent on any one customer, or it's not dependent on any one vendor. In fact, you and I both worked with a guy you might remember who had a customer that was more than 25% of his business. He was in the service business. That customer went away, got in trouble, and his business almost failed.
Yeah.
And so it's not that you should turn big customers away, but ideally you want those customers to be, let's say, 10% or less of your overall value.
Yeah.
Employee side, you don't want to have an employee walk out the door and everything that's known about their particular job walks out the door with them. So you've got to look at your key employees. And then, of course, if you have a vendor that you totally rely on, what happens if they go away? So you look at those sort of things.
Yeah, and I'm going to add one more thing, Wayne, and we'll do that in a minute. Remind me to add something to this list. But who am I to add to you and this guy? But I'm going to. But let me just tell you this. It really is important when you're thinking about your business, because it's really hard. It's easy to say, make sure that it runs without your biggest client. Yeah. Make sure it runs without your best employee. Yeah. I mean, it's easy to say that, but it's really hard to do.
Very hard.
The best thing to do is drop incentives into these relationships so that there's reasons for people to stick around. There are incentives for suppliers to keep you at pricing and keep your relationship. You can create retention incentives for employees as well. There's ways you can do that to make sure that some of these key people that you've got to have and suppliers you've got to have, and even clients, that you can turn those clients into contractual relationships. Now, all of a sudden, if I've got a 20, 30% client, but it's a 3-year contract, that's completely different. So, or they turn into some sort of subscription-based client. So there's ways to do this that can help you with your business. And again, that's something to look forward to.
You're getting at the how, and you're exactly right.